House will come back to order. The House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, you want to ring the bell? All right, House will come back to order. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions. The clerk will read.
Commending and congratulating Susan Moore, commending Lee Thomas as the Georgia Trend 2019 Georgian of the Year for her work in attracting and growing the motion picture and television industry in Georgia, recognizing commending the Georgia National Fairgrounds and Agri Center. Commending Cameron Banks, Tri-Cities High School's class of 2019 valedictorian and star student. Commending Wendy Fan, Forest Park High School's class 2019 valedictorian. Commending Zarin Deshawn Vanell Hood, Banneker High School's class 2019 valedictorian. Recognizing, commending Yvonne Mussington. Commending the Marion County High School girls basketball team for winning the 2019 GHSA Class A State Basketball Championship. Commending the Snow Police Department for its role in helping make Snow the safest city in Georgia for 2019. Commending Representative Lynn Smith of House District number 70. Commending Alfrey Lewis, Stockbridge's High School's Teacher of the Year. Commending Gary Ann Parks, Austin Road Middle School's 2019 Teacher of the Year. Recognizing, commending Rita Daniels on her long career of education outreach. Commending the Global Sikh community and recognizing April 14, 2019 as Universal Brotherhood Day at the state capitol. Commending and congratulating Honorable Donna Pittman. Recognizing, commending Major Rebecca Y. Brown. Recognizing, commending Clayton County's annual Mayfest. Recognizing, commending Marie Emanuela Newman. Honoring the life and memory of C.L. Moffitt. Commending the House interns for the 2019 regular session. Congratulating the betrothed Caitlin and Alan Fuller. Recognizing, commending Dr. Dub Darville. Honoring and commemorating the AJC Peachtree Road race, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privilege resolutions? The chair hears none and the resolutions are adopted. This House will be in order. The chair recognizes the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House adopt the Conference Committee report for House Bill 31.
Chairman England has moved that the House adopt the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 31. The clerk will read the Conference Committee report.
Committee on Conference on House Bill 31 recommends that both the House of Representatives and the Senate recede from their positions and that the attached Committee on Conference substitute to House Bill 31, be adopted. Respectfully submitted for the House of Representatives, Honorable Terry England, Honorable Jan Jones, Honorable John Burns. For the Senate, Honorable Jack Hill, Honorable Butch Miller, and Honorable Mike Dugan.
House will come to order. We are about to take up the only issue that we are constitutionally mandated to do each session. Chair recognizes Chairman England to explain the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 31.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You will see on your desk the copy of the full bill, along with the tracking document, and over lunch also appeared the highlights from the House Budget and Research Office that are there as well, that hit the high points of the budget that we have here before us this afternoon. First and foremost, many thank yous are owed to many people that have made this moment possible for us to be here to vote on this adoption of this bill. Of course, our House committee and subcommittee chairs and our members, but most importantly, our House Budget and Research Office staff, the ladies and gentlemen that we have that work for us across the street, in my office, and everywhere else, that spend hours upon hours upon hours going over agency requests, meeting with agencies to understand what is truly needed to make sure our state operates in the most efficient manner possible. To our Senate colleagues, Chairman Jack Hill across the building from us here, it has been my pleasure to work with him now for 9 years in creating the document that it is before you and the ones that we've had in previous years. Melody Debussy and the Senate Budget and Evaluation Office and their team over there have been instrumental in getting us here as well. But certainly not least, the governor and the governor's staff at OPB and their valuable input and help throughout this process. Kelly Farr at OPB, and of course Governor Kemp and Chief of Staff Tim Fleming have been more than gracious with their time and their help as well to get us to this point. So I'm going to break with a little bit of a long-standing tradition, and where we normally walk through the tracking sheet and show you the changes, but I'm going to try to summarize those changes for you through some comments, and then if we do have some questions at the end, I'll be glad to entertain a few of those as well. But the documents, as I've said, have been on your desk since about 8:30 or 9 o'clock last night. And I hope you've had the opportunity to look at it. I know many of you have come and asked me questions. Martha and Christine have been on the floor all morning as well. So in looking at the documents, you're going to see that many of the positions that are there and agreed to are House positions. Senate had made some changes, and we sat there in conference and have come back to several of their changes we've agreed to, but many of our original positions have been agreed to as well. But the biggest issue that I want you to be able to take home with you today and know is that we are providing a $3,000 pay raise for all of our teachers across this state, all certificated personnel, starting July the 1st. You know, I have to say, even our Herculean efforts to lift $166.8 million to fully fund QBE last year did not have the start to finish executive branch, legislative branch, and chamber to chamber, Democrat or Republican, rural and urban, overwhelming support as this salary increase has had. This raise, the likes of which we've not seen in this state since Governor Zell Miller executed significant increases over 25 years ago, is certainly historical. Make no mistake or undervalue the magnitude of the $3,000 raise. It represents an 8.8% increase in just 1 year, the largest pay raise of its kind in our state's history. It is obviously one of those rare, once in a quarter of a century opportunities to validate our taxpayer support for our local school systems, our personnel, and the expertise guidance and the contributions they make in shaping future generations of Georgia for years to come. But as you already know, in Georgia, we are fiscal conservatives. We live within our means and keep a balanced budget. And even in doing these raises, we stay with a very moderate revenue estimate growth of only 2.3% over the amended fiscal year 19 budget. Those new $611 million are finite and the needs are great. The $3,000 raise for certificated or certified personnel cost us nearly $549.8 million and absorbs 89.9%, or $9 out of every $10 in new and additional money going into this budget. At each stage of the budget process, we have proposed varying ways to accomplish this raise within the confines of these moderate growth in revenues. Stage one, the governor laid the foundation for the discussion and put nearly every new dollar of precious taxpayer money in one item for our teachers. Stage two, we applied that raise to all of our certified school personnel. Nearly 10,000 additional employees were included in our version when it left here. And we had to adjust that 3,000 amount to the 2,775. Stage three, the Senate agreed with applying it to all of these certified personnel, but increased it to $3,000, but only funded it for 10 months. And finally, in stage four, the documents you have in front of you, when we had time then to pool all of our resources, all of our policy resources, the consensus resulted in a $3,000 raise for 12 months to all qualified educators and professional staff. Over $549 million. Again, 89% of new dollars in this one policy initiative. This is certainly the defining hallmark of House Bill 31, but it's not the only one. Teachers should also note that this budget infuses $133.7 million to fund the training and experience raises they see, another $21.5 million investment in the teacher retirement system, funding for school safety assessment positions as recommended by our own House Study Committee, to evaluate each school safety plan, which allows our teachers to focus on what they are trained to do and love to do, and that is teach. Other school personnel are also prioritized in this budget. School bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors, all part of that school family, also receive a 2% increase, which is $2.8 million of over $115 million spread through most state employee agencies. These public school employees are also provided with an increase in their retirement factor, which is funded at $1.6 million. School bus drivers will get new equipment. This budget includes $21.8 million in funds to go to local systems for new school buses. We have fully funded QBE again, as I mentioned. The Department of Education in one fiscal year nets over $707 million in new dollars for a total budget of $10.6 billion and increases its overall percentage of the entire state budget to 38.65%, triple the funding of the next largest agency. This education is our priority. This is putting state taxpayer dollars where our mouth is. When we say we value education, we're certainly proving that in this document. Policy drives the dollars in this budget. It's what the Speaker envisioned when he married the House Budget Office and the House Research Office several years ago, to put two things together and to align them as much as possible. But when times get hard, budget can drive policy. And the results are not always what we strive for, so we stand here today to tell you that the policy driven in this budget, in this document, we have optimized the entire legislative process like NASCAR drivers on a track on a Sunday afternoon. The budget also sets another education finance record with $1.25 billion going into the lottery funds for pre-K, Hope scholarships, and Hope grants. Pre-K also gets another $500,000 in new state funds to provide for funding for more child care assistance at quality rated centers throughout Child Care Services program called CAPS. Policy initiatives of this House dictate that we care for Georgia's most vulnerable citizens as well. In Health and Human Services, we have followed a House Study Committee report that added nearly $2.7 million to provide a $1 per day per diem increase to relative foster care, primarily grandparents raising grandchildren. This is support for keeping families together as a state policy. And this is particularly important as the growing need to increase the number of children coming into the state's custody, which requires nearly $10 million infusion of cash in the FY20 budget for out-of-home care. The child in the system is further supported with $250,000 in expansion for our CASAs around the state. Those of you that are involved in your communities know the valuable role that CASAs play, and I would encourage you that if you're not involved in lending a helping hand to our CASAs, that you do so and become so engaged. Child welfare is now a $289 million program within DHS. For those in need of mental health services, they are also better supported with a proposed $4.9 million to provide 6 new facilities in underserved areas of this state, as well as $26 million in general bed capacity for outpatient care. We have increased the state's share of supported employment wages in multiple places to engender independent living for these individuals, which is also the goal of now and comp waivers. These have been increased for another 125 Georgians to receive these services at a cost of $7.9 million. Our aging veterans are supported with the nation's only state-funded nursing homes. A $23.5 million allotment of taxpayer funds are headed to help take care of those deserving individuals going forward. All of our elderly citizens are considered with an intensity within this budget as well. The House proposal to increase congregate and home delivered meals by $1.4 million sailed through our conference discussions, as did a $2 million increase for slots in home and community living assistance, additional guardianship, adult caseworkers, assisted technology, and the final phase-in of funding the increase of the personal nursing home allowance, a personal allowance for nursing home residents per House Bill 206. Your policies, again, driving your budget. As a policy decision as well, this budget utilizes all $150 million in tobacco settlement receipts and health care activities. As we weigh our future policy for the manner in which we deliver public health benefits through the Medicaid program, we know that in every possible scenario, we will need providers. Medicaid rates need to be more competitive, and even as we are filling the $100 million loss of federal Medicaid matching dollars across our agencies with state funds today, we still manage to provide rate increases to those delivering that care, 3% to nursing home providers at a cost of $13.4 million, and 3% rate increase to dentists are examples. And just as this bill originally left the House, the conference report also provides for a significant expansion of 211 graduates and 90 undergraduate slots for residency programs across our medical schools, including Mercer, Morehouse, Emory, PCOM, and our own State Medical College in Augusta. 54 of those slots are new OBGYNs, bringing the total addition of those over the last few years to 104 slots. The emphasis on maternal health is obvious in House Bill 31. There is $1.5 million in funding for feminine hygiene product grants for low-income clients of health services and schools, $1 million for rural maternal health services and screening, personnel for the Maternal Mortality Review Committee, and 3 satellite perinatal sites in rural Jenkins, Randolph, and Wilcox counties. Rural health care also has new financial state support for meeting the federal requirements of emergency room upgrades for behavioral health clients. 5 Coverdell Murphy Act stroke readiness grants are included, an enhanced payment rate for swing beds, and grants to create 5 new level 4 emergency rooms for increased trauma care across the state as well. Rural initiatives instigated by this House and other policy areas are prevalent too. $300,000 in grants to clean up blighted areas in small communities, $2 million for accelerating the state broadband mapping process, and a new $300,000 program for small communities to help with their visitor centers and helping them market their localities around this state and in a way to help grow economic development and tourism. The Department of Transportation is a key part of economic development as well, and its $2 billion appropriation is also a reflection of our policy. Our House policy in HB 170 from 2015 translates into $1.9 billion in motor fuel funding for FY20. Your conferees also agreed to put $35 million into bonds for 7 priority projects on the DOT priority list as the first installments to bring our state-owned rail lines up to Class 2 standards, which are 25 mile per hour maximum speeds and 286,000 pound car loadings. That is also a recommendation of the House Rural Development Council. But it's also plays into the effort to reduce the amount of truck traffic on our highways and the wear and tear that they're placing on our interstates and state roads across our state. To align our vision for the economic activity around the ports, this budget funds a measure you recently approved, the Savannah Logistics Technology Corridor, a partnership between the Ports Authority, the Georgia Cyber Center, and the state's northeastern communities to create a hub of high-paying, high-tech jobs that work in concert with these unique state assets and feed the economic growth throughout the state. $400,000 will help develop a base site within the corridor. Keeping all of these citizens and the assets safe is obviously paramount to being an attractive state for industry and a fundamental expectation of our citizens. Because of our deliberate policies to reform court and correctional systems, state funding has been level over multiple budgets now. We haven't had to fund building a new prison since the 1990s. In House Bill 31, we expand our reentry support system by 10 new communities. The $500,000 investment offsets the much greater cost of incarceration and recidivism with a proven 14% reduction in the revolving door correctional costs. Those freed up monies allow us to make even more preventative investments in progressive public safety needs that include the new gang task force, an expanded cyber crime center, and a human trafficking unit, all of which are funded in House Bill 31 for $1.6 million. Finally, a nod to general government. As I noted earlier, House Bill 31 includes merit increase for all state employees of 2% for a total of $119.4 million spread across all agencies. The conferees also funded $1.5 million within the Office of Planning and Budget, the official census repository of this state, to begin census activities with our local partners in order to get the word out. Undercounts deeply affect our fiscal relationship with the federal government for population-driven program formulas such as Title IV, foster care, adoption, peach care, child care development grants, and Medicaid. Remember that $100 million loss of federal funds I noted earlier? That's based on population. This multi-year partnership with cities, counties, and other community partners will have a significant return on investment. To that end, Census 2020 will be electronic, so the conferees have also added additional funding for public libraries to make technology upgrades in preparation for the census purposes, which is $2.6 million of the entire $13.1 million bond package for libraries across all 159 counties. Let me share a few details about the bond package as I wrap up. It includes $1.1 billion in principal. Once again, education agencies take the lion's share, or 63% of the bonds, for shared expenses to build new classroom spaces, modern labs, and equipment needs. There's an authorization for up to $150 million in new voting machines, $35 million in the rail package I mentioned earlier, $1.3 million for farmers market repairs and renovations, and then that's also kind of the outgrowth of another recent House Study Committee, House Resolution 1471, Representative Stovall from last year, and $24 million for park renovations, which in turn generate funds and a variety of other tangible property and equipment needs. For those who might argue that we're borrowing recklessly, consider borrowing, easy to say right after lunch, as the exact same financial tool that you use at home, because it certainly is. We borrow for 5 years on a new car, and sometimes the state does too. We borrow for the shelter of our homes. The state borrows for shelter too. In fact, the average homeowner is universally advised to spend up to 30% of income on a mortgage alone. However, in House Bill 31, the entire state debt service for everything is 4.4% of our income. This rational fiscal management is rewarded with low interest rates and a AAA bond rating from the intense scrutiny of our rating agencies. We borrow a little, we spend reasonably on our priorities, and we also save. Our revenue shortfall reserve stands today at $2.5 billion. All of these deliberate financial decisions are pieces of our state's fiscal management. I believe House Bill 31 epitomizes our legislative and fiscal priorities. It was with unilateral agreement between us on getting all those teacher pay raises right that made the conference committee report possible in such a short period of time. Everyone came to the table with their sleeves rolled up and a sense of determination to make that happen. The collaboration from subcommittees all the way up to the governor's office, but especially within our chamber's membership, has been refreshing and rewarding. Ultimately, the people of Georgia are the real winners here. Mr. Speaker, that concludes my comments. I'll be glad to answer a few questions, and if there are none, I would appreciate everyone's favorable consideration of the conference committee report for House.
You do have a few questions.
Okay.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the minority leader of the House, Leader Trammell, to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
First, thank you for your work in the work of the conference committee on the budget. The first question I would ask is, isn't it true there's no money for Medicaid expansion or to cover anybody that was contemplated in Senate Bill 106 for this fiscal year? In this
No,
budget?
sir. None of that has been developed yet, so there's nothing there for that.
Will the gentleman further yield?
Yes, sir.
I'd like just to ask for an explanation or summary at 2.1, under 92.100 Medicaid, low income Medicaid. Can you tell me what the thought process was? It appears that the conference committee cut the amount from the governor's recommendation and the amount that was passed by the House and the amount passed by the Senate. Can you give me some insight into what
yes,
that
sir.
was?
Absolutely. As you know, having been here for several years now, Medicaid numbers as it relates to ABD, age blind and disabled, and low income Medicaid, those numbers fluctuate considerably. And through the winter and had a very moderate flu season within the state of Georgia, projections have come down. And of course, with this being what we call the big budget, we also have the opportunity to come back in the amended. Should another adjustment be necessary, we've always got that opportunity to do it in the amended budget as well.
And will the gentleman further yield?
Yes.
I think your answer indicates this, but that is your answer the same on 91.100 for Medicaid, the blind, aged, and disabled?
Yes.
Where it appears there's a reduction.
It applies both to ABD and to LIM. Yes, sir.
Recognizes Chairman Setzler to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your presentation as always, and I appreciate this fact sheet you gave us. I wanted to ask you a clarification if I could. Could you speak to the additional residency slots we're funding in this for our schools of medicine?
Sure. We've made it a priority several years ago to add additional residency slots across this state, and we're on track to be somewhere between 600 and 700 new residency slots across the state of Georgia in partnership with all those medical schools that I mentioned a while ago by the year 2025. And we continue to add those slots We're adding slots to look at rural and underserved areas as well as metropolitan areas as well.
About how much we're putting in this year's budget to make that happen?
100 and, hold on just 1 second, and I can tell you. You don't have it off the top of my head.
Are the numbers on your sheet pretty much a summary
Yes,
of that?
the numbers on the sheet there that you have with you are the numbers. I thought I had it right here in front of me.
I'm looking on page 5 of your sheet. I just want to understand that. I appreciate the chairman's indulgence. If the chairman would yield, I could direct another question if that's appropriate.
You know, you're looking at 1.9 million in primary care and about another 73,000 on capitation rates for residency slots at PCOM in Swanee and in Moultrie. Then another 500,000 for a 3-year primary care residency track, and it just continues to go on. So it's significant resources of the state that are invested there.
One further question. Right below that, there's a reference to a maternal mortality of $5 million of our funds to replace federal funds that have disappeared and a new center of excellence. Could you speak to that line item as well? It sounds like it's an important component for us, but I'm not sure I understand the details of that.
Yes, sir. As we know, we do have a maternal mortality rate within the state that's nothing to be proud of, as you and others know. And we do realize that around the state, and especially in rural areas, that rate is significantly higher than what it is in metropolitan areas where health care is more accessible. So you'll see that we have done some satellite sites for perinatal support in Jenkins, Randolph, and Wilcox counties as well. But what you wind up with is many times labor and delivery goes fine, the mother goes home, is tending to the child, there becomes some issues post-delivery. And so we're understanding that not only there, but also through adding the 54 residency slots for OBGYNs, that is something that we're in need of bolstering in our state.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you and the governor for those things, and appreciate your leadership on this.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Dickerson to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to thank you for adding that additional funds for maternity mortality and infant mortality, because as you know, we're the #1 state to do business, yet we're #1 in infant and maternal mortality. So I think it's very important that that has been added to the budget, and I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. I certainly agree. Chairman Parrish and his subcommittee, of course, that's been a priority for them this year as well as this body as a whole. Thank you.
I think that's all the questions you have.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I certainly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for all the input that each and every one of you have had into this document as we've gone through this process this year. Another thank you to our committee and my subcommittee chairs, but especially to our staff. Ladies and gentlemen, as I've said at the beginning a few minutes ago, and as I said as we presented the budgets this year, it would not be possible without the men and women that we have working for us in the House Budget and Research Office, and the hours and hours and hours of untold work that they put into the budget while we're here in session, but not only here and during this time, not during this 3 months, but 12 months out of the year, in meeting with our state agencies and individuals and groups that care about Georgians. And so that when we're here for our 40 days, we can make the best decisions possible with the information we have to make sure that 10.8 million citizens in this state are taken care of. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask for your favorable consideration of the conference committee report, and Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
On the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 31, all those in favor of the adoption of the conference committee report will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Stovall rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that the House Study Committee on the Revitalization of the State Farmers Market is very excited to see that there's money appropriated for the repairs of the facilities at the State Farmers Market?
As the leader in that effort, I know you know what you're talking about. Those in favor of the conference committee report are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 31, the ayes are 165, the nays are 11. The conference committee report on the budget has been adopted by the House. I'm tempted to recognize you for that. The chair recognizes the chair of the House Rules Committee for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Rules Committee will meet in 3:41 in 5 minutes.
House Rules Committee is going to meet at 2:35 in room 341. This house will be in recess until 2:45.